And we're live. I see the little red thing.
I see the red thing.
The red thing means we're live.
Red means go, I guess, in this situation. I
Maybe
don't know.
it does. I don't know.
Life is confusing, but
yeah.
We are back again, everybody. And when I logged in, there were people in the chat talking like 45 minutes ago.
Oh, wow.
So I'm like, all right, I can deal with that. So
yeah, actually, you're right. The first comment was ground fog at 1:09 p.m.
Oh, so a couple hours ago.
Yeah, and then 4:18, then Ed started, and then we had 4:23. Marco jumped in. Dang, you guys are already like here before us.
I know, so that's good. I like that interaction and the fact that people kind of jump in. Gurger Paul Man, what's up? It's because of him that we are having this show. I mean, we would have had the show, but because he sent me in this Hathaway knife, and I didn't know anything about Hathaway before that, and I probably still don't know all that much. Gabe's going to correct us because he's in the waiting room, and he's going to correct and tell us everything about Hathaway knives. But without him sending this into me, I would have never done a video on it. I would have never reached out to Gabe, and we wouldn't be here talking to Gabe in a few seconds when we bring him on.
Let's just bring him on. Yeah.
Gabe, how are you, sir?
Doing good. Good to be here. I'm thankful for Gergerpel also. He's so cool to send that to you. He reached out and said he was doing it, and it was like, all right, let's do it.
It was pretty cool. He sent this, and then like a couple days later, he sent me a Holt Renegade, which I have filmed also. So I'm ready to send them both back to you, sir. I was waiting because I wanted to have this in hand while we were talking today. But yeah, I can send these back out to you on Monday. Gerger Paul will chat after it messages to make sure we get that to you correctly. So, dang, we got a lot of people in here, and they are chatting it up, which is great to see. We don't really go through.
Is that something that is only available to you guys? I won't mess with my screen too much because I don't want to lose you. But
yeah, the chat, depending on, I don't know how it works for you guys that log in.
Yeah, it might be different.
No sweat.
I think it's different.
What I do when I do a StreamYard and somebody like had me as a guest, I just pop on my cell phone and then turn off the volume on it and just look at the comments.
Right. Well, he's using his cell for joining with us. So
I figured, I mean, my laptops are several years old, so it was like, best technology, best picture, best quality is probably going to be on the iPhone. So
yep,
I went with that.
Works great.
All good. We're glad you're here. Thanks for taking a little bit of your time.
Of course.
Weekend to chat with us.
Looking forward to it.
Okay. So, yeah. So this is the Saros. Is that correct?
Yeah, I say it's Saros, but
Saros.
I like.
Saros? Okay.
I kind of picked it off of. We had like a solar eclipse happen where the totality showed here in Casper in a big way, and like it was part of my realization of like I've always wanted to make a product and I've always wanted to start my shop, and that was the point in time where I started designing the Saros, and so it was like, well. It means like a 223-month cycle between solar eclipses or something like that. And I just kind of was like, well, that fits me perfectly. And I went with it and just, tried to find a name that didn't exist. And let it just stick.
Perfect. So tell us a little bit about yourself. You're in Casper, Wyoming. How did you get into making knives? When did that passion start? What were you doing before you got into this? And is this what you're doing full time?
It's an interesting thing because I was forever into making, or I knew I was going to be into making. I didn't necessarily know what, but all the way back in kindergarten, my mom's a draftsman, and she would give me graph paper, and I would sketch bicycle parts and knives. and swords and stuff like that. And they were super crude sketches and just like little kid style, like
I'm sure,
a Bowie knife and, and like that's perfect. And then I became a machinist, and I machined a lot of stuff for industry, for companies around Casper. It's a big oil field place.
Okay.
And, did a lot of cool things there, helped some shops grow, and realized that it would be silly of me not to branch out and try and start my own shop when I was taking the work home with me. I cared so much that I was feeling what an owner would feel even when I wasn't the owner. And so it was like, all right, how do we do this? Do we compete with the other shops, or do we think of something that is non-traditional for Casper, Wyoming, and try to make that? So it was like, well, complex little aerospace type, medical type, I still make things for all industries, but it was like, I'm going to shoot for any industry that isn't here. And that way I'm not detracting. Maybe we'll even level up in the long run. And then I've always carried a knife. I mean, I mailed away to Boy Scouts in, I think, 4th grade with paper out money to have them ship me a couple knives back. And I think it was probably like 13 weeks or something like that before I saw them. Mailed a check and, back in the 90s.
Right.
Got the knives and loved them and carried them. And it was like, well, I want to carry something that I've made every single day. And it was like, okay, so a knife would fit that really well. And then I started thinking about like how I wanted my knives to be. And it was like, part of it is to build a little bit of a calling card for machining complex components. And so that's where I didn't even really know the word integral knife when I first designed the Saros. It was like, okay, I'm gonna try and make the handle out of all one piece, and let that idea just kind of like stick. And I like set design parameters around the way I use knives. It wasn't anything based on industry. It was like, it has to open one-handed, it has to close one-handed, because sometimes you're like laying in a machine and you can get to your knife, but your other hand's on the thing you need to cut. And so it was super important to me to have that. I wanted super corrosion resistance, and I wanted to eliminate every component possible because I knew I was going to be making them all on one machine. And so all of those design parameters factored into why the Saros is the way the Saros is.
Which is kind of a tall order. That's a long laundry list of things.
I had no idea how long of a list it was, to be honest with you. It was like, okay, this is what it has to be. And I 3D printed the first versions of it. And it was like, okay, this is like, it's a prototype, and this is what I would like to evolve from. And then got a machine on the ground, started making everything in just a 3-axis mill. And that's what I had from the end of 2018 all the way to mid 2021 when I committed on my second machine, which I optioned out to be 5-axis to kind of eliminate some of the heartache that was attached to the integral handles. Like, we need to be able to hit 5 sides of an object in one setup, or this is never going to be a viable option to sustain the shop. And so I'm a full-time maker, but right now I make a lot of stuff for anybody who needs it. And I call it contract work through GH Manufacturing Consulting. And it's always making stuff, but it takes too much away from the knives and the time I get to put towards those. And so I'm just kind of scaling and trying to add some team members that can help make this more of a full-time gig. Because there's a lot of people who want to buy them, and I'm not releasing them. I have several pre-orders that I'm making the way I've been making them and getting those in their hands. And then I talked to Dirk about some of the design changes, and his input definitely solidified that they were needed. Like the lock bar pushing past the lock if you push on it. And it was like little things that I hadn't quite wrapped my mind around how I was going to fix it quite yet. But that was because and this is like the dumbest way to start a business that you can, is to not look at your competitors. Like I was like, I'm not going to take someone's knife apart and measure every little bit of it. I'm going to stay innocent in a sense to try and create something that felt and looked different than the others. And like, I've now come up with how I'm going to do it. And I've been working the last several weeks ever since I sent you that video, but just like trying to get my programming to fit the new design. And then I'm going to cut some new blades and implement that. And I think that is going to be, because it's kind of wild. The way I've been fitting the lock bar is with computer measurement technology and in machine and measuring the face of the lock blade or the lock face on the blade itself to make it match the way the handles are made. And then there's a lot of room for error there, and hitting that tolerance has been really tricky. So eliminating the need for that is going to be, I mean, it's going to be a launching point for sure. Cause it's been the main hang up of like, well, can't send this one out, make a new pin, you know, slightly bigger tolerance, or make a new piece to get this to fit better. Or I've attacked fixing them a lot of different ways until they fit the way they need to. But even when they lock up and they don't have any lock rock, that lock bar still, like I've got mine here, still pushes past. Like when you hold it and do like serious cutting, it feels gummy. And that's not something I wanted. It was like, they're great because a lot of people don't cut with them, but I designed it around like the thick blade. It's designed around using your knife for everything.
Oh, for sure.
Like I wanted to survive. The first thing one of my buddies did who bought one was pry his frozen car door open with it. And it was like, oh, did it survive? And he was like, it survived. And I was like, okay, like that's good news. You know, we'll keep with the trend and thick blades. And
it's definitely, you know, got kind of a thicker blade. Which, and if you haven't watched the video, go watch the video. I talk about all of it, and I show kind of detailed with the lock bar and how it kind of floats. And there's a slight bit of, like, there's not really play, but you can kind of feel it moving. You can't really see it, but you guys that have had knives and stuff, you know what I'm talking about.
And you don't want that.
And you don't want that.
Is it due to the lack of material and then it flexes, or is it the angle of the lock bar to the back of the blade tang? The geometry's off. What causes that? Have you figured that out?
The angle is on, but there's 3 tolerances that factor into the way that those linkages meet up. And that's part of what I've eliminated with the redesign of like, well, there will be room in the system for the tolerances to not have to be so tight, where like right now it's about a 2/10,000th window, and that window factors onto 3 different pieces, and that's just a nightmare. Like
do you think that having the knife built right up front as an integral added a lot more challenges to making this kind of knife?
Oh, absolutely. And it pushed my limits as a machinist and in all the good ways. It was like, I've always learned the most biting off a big piece and just worrying about how I was going to chew it later. And so I've made these handles, like no kidding. We've been going, and I started machining the knives right away in October of 2018, probably like 50 different ways since then. And it was like, well, made a bunch. I've got a whole bin of scrap grade 5 titanium handles, you know, and like a lot of money spent on like, well, this one was wrong. Why was it wrong? And I've told a lot of people, like when they are maybe going after something like this themselves, is that the only way to be successful is like a careful analysis of documented results. And so you just like make real good detail of like, why did it fail? What's wrong with it? Like sometimes it went right.
Called science. Absolutely.
It just took too long, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's great. These are cool. People are going to like them, but I don't want them to be in a price point. I got to adjust the camera really quick. That's the taped on version of a camera mount I have going here.
I love it.
But it's just like, definitely like roll with the punches type of thing. Cause like, well, we did one right. How long did it take? 46 hours. Like, well,
Right.
let's change something here because that's just not going to be sustainable.
Right.
No, I get that. And to Cliff's point, you know, he'd still use it every day. Yes, no, guys, yes, those are some issues I pointed out and we're talking about here, but I have no fear that the lock is going to fail. I would use this, no problem. Gerger Paul's been carrying it and using it. So I don't have a safety concern or anything about it, just to be clear. And when I did point this out, makers can go either one of two ways, like you did by reaching out and then we chatted. I sent you a little bit different video just for you where I talked about some things.
Yeah.
And literally, I think it was 2 or 3 hours later, you sent me a video of your new design and what you changed and fixed and all that. So that was great. I am never saying negative things to beat up a maker. I point out issues that I see in, I hope, a polite, professional, and respectful manner. Other makers sometimes have said, well, I have said some things about some other makers that it went horribly wrong. I don't talk to those makers anymore, and it's just gone really wrong. Again, it's just about my perspective, and it's nothing personal to makers. I look at it like in my work, we always have somebody kind of proofread. I used to write specifications.
Yeah.
And so somebody else in my office always read my spec sections and made sure like the page numbers were right and all of the page breaks and all that stuff, right? Because as you're reading it or as you're making something, your brain fills in the blanks. And there was words or typos that were wrong that they would find. And so I never took it personally, and I hope the makers don't, unless it's a luck knife that I'm talking about, because then it gets personal. Because, you know, his stuff is, well, it's questionable. But, and I say that because Luck and I are friends. But, yeah,
it's
no, I try to just
it's hard when you
honest.
Created art to like let somebody have an opinion about it. But the best thing you can do is hear them, because they're coming from a place, whether it's earnesty or not, they're coming from a place that they believe in. And
Right.
so like, I mean, for me, the only way, like I kind of made it up. I like put blinders on, and I like didn't follow a lot of makers. Like I used to write a lot of songs and play in bands and stuff like that. And at the time I was delivering pizza, and it was like, I would deliver pizza for 6-7 hours on the night.
Now we're talking my language.
Yeah. And I wouldn't listen to the radio because I didn't want anything to eat its way into the song that I was going to write later that night. I wanted to focus on what I was going to do, and you miss things and gaps or, you know, and then like bringing someone else into it, you're nervous and you're hoping for the best.
Right.
But, if you can listen to them, then you can evolve and like maybe make a better product, because that's what it's about.
That's what
like,
it's about.
It's fun, but the last thing I want to be is so stubborn that the knives have flaws. You know, the whole point of them is to make them as good as can be, you know.
Yeah.
And
no,
repeatable and sustainable.
Yep.
It's totally a thing.
Totally understand. And like you said, you didn't listen to the radio because you didn't want that to influence. There have been some knives that I've reviewed that have come either from Alex or like Jim Skelton. Jim Skelton will send me some really high-end stuff sometimes. And there's been a couple that I specifically have not watched his videos because I knew he was shipping it to me, and I didn't want to hear his opinion before I handled it myself and did my own video.
It keeps
one, I don't want to regurgitate everything he just said.
Yeah.
And two, I want to kind of give my opinion and then not dig at something he said maybe or things like that. And him and I talk about it. And then once I film my video, then I do go and watch his. And then I'm
I disagree with both of you.
Okay.
because I think that I appreciate it, right? And I also used to play in a few bands when I was younger as a guitarist and stuff like that. So when you said that, it kind of like resonated with me. And I know exactly where you're coming from. And like, I know where Dirk's coming from with reviews as well, because that's the thing a lot of reviewers want to do. They're like, well, I don't want to be tainted. However, I completely disagree with that, because I think that, have you guys ever heard that term, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants?
Absolutely. Yes.
Well, that's what people continue to do time after time.
Yeah.
And if you can absorb something, because some of the greatest things not necessarily came 100% from that person. It's a collection of influences and
learn all you can, and then
put it together. You just got to be smart about it. And after you collect everything, step back, look at it, and then, you know, like me, when I review stuff, which is like I don't do that anymore. But I have a checklist in my head of like the things that I think are important. I play around with different ways of making videos, like, right, the chapter is like, how does it cut? And the next chapter is, how does it sit in the pocket? And the next chapter is something else, right? Mm-hmm. I thought like that'd be cool, like make a checklist of like all the things that people look at when it comes to knives.
Absolutely.
Right.
But then it didn't work for me after handling 2 or 3 and trying it with that format, because then I'm like, well, this one's kind of an artsy knife, and this one's kind of more of like an EDC knife, and this is kind of in between. So then like there's different like critiques that you like, that criterias for those types of knives. So now like I do watch other videos when I get a knife, and I look at it and I see like what people say about it. And there's some stuff like I'll say bullshit, and then you just gotta, like, if you've handled enough stuff, you kind of get an idea, right? Like when maybe like like 12 years ago when I started this knife box behind me, like maybe back then, like I needed to watch a lot of videos and absorb a lot to know what to look for, right? Oh, lock bar insert, that's kind of clever. Oh, ball bearings and knives, that's clever. Oh, wait, this guy likes washers better because there's less play. Oh, that's an interesting spin on it. Like, there's a lot of stuff that you can gather. And in the end, there's a lot of people that are right and a lot of people that are wrong.
Totally. Oh, that's like, absolutely sure. Totally get that.
I definitely started to listen. I just wanted my first version to be like me. And I did. It was a tip down carry and everything. And like just through like, because I didn't dive into the knife world. I like noticed the industry and I was like, all right, this is something I could produce. And there's a market that I could talk to it about on Instagram. And like, I could reach out of our small town of 50,000 and actually, make a go at this. And I started to listen, and it was like, people didn't like tip down. I had made it that way out of safety reasons. And then like, it became clear that this wasn't just about functionality. It was about that the knife is safe while it's tip up. Like not just the tip down aids to the knife not stabbing you while you grab it, but the fact that the thing is solid with it tip up because the detent sits tight enough. And that kind of stuff, it was like, that makes a ton of sense, And
but
my original
tip down is not really that big of a deal. I know a lot of people are haters on tip down. I have a few like really old knives, like old Kershaw and things.
And they were only tip down.
And a lot of people did it that way exactly for the reason that you said. Totally. It's just the thing that people don't like is that when you're holding on to the knife and you got that clip against your palm right here, I think people find that weird. I don't. I actually, like on some knives, they made it on purpose, like a little pad, which is, I thought, kind of clever.
Can I grab one of them really quick?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so Mersault, our Hathaway pivot Torques. Yeah. And they are big. You have to go out to the garage and get your mechanics tools to find what Gerger Paul says, T25. And I think he's right.
That's a good size too, because out of the smaller Torques, like that's like the top end of it, T20 and T25. That's
and
cool to find.
The actual pivot on them is T45. I'm a machinist, and I have
I knew it was big.
tools, you know, like they're in the box. And so it was like, I was kind of inspired by that scene on The Mummy where he like pops that thing open and puts it into the mummy's tomb or whatever and turns it. Like, I want something massive because that scene spoke to me as a kid. But yeah, I mean, they're T45 and then T25 on the clip. Oh, I'm missing T25 on the clip and the lock bar stop, and then T10 on the pin. And so, I didn't realize the T45s were so hard to source. They are kind of a tricky Torx bit to buy. I'm in the process of making those, and I'll have them available on the website at some point. But at this point, I've like recommended to people where they can get them when they reach out. It's like, well, Husky has a version, and you can pick one up at Home Depot. Generally, it's a socket. It's not even on a screwdriver anymore. It's like, well, you're gonna have to have a little.
You gotta get a ratchet.
Ratchet and make it happen that way.
Yep.
These are original versions. This one being the original pocket clip. And again, I was inspired by as few of pieces as possible. And so this one has 2 less pieces, no clip bolt, which I make both of. And so it eliminated some heartache there. But it was very tricky because it's press fit into the handle. And like for blade centering and alignment, there was very little adjustment. And it had to be solely off of blade thickness of the blade itself. And so I was making each piece very custom, and things kind of changed. And it was also a hex, a modified hexagon, but you could use just a socket on that. And then I was like, well, you know, people want deep carry. And so I made a new version, which was like this one, which was a lot longer. It kind of was cool because it functioned as a lock bar stop as well. And didn't have to make that piece. But then I just kind of listened to what people wanted to see in a knife. And it was like, well, let's just take the next step and design a clip and do it that way. The Anura, which I'm working hard to get the next version of that out. The first ones of those I made had an integral clip as well. So it was a handle with the clip actually milled into it. And so I'll go grab one of those here in a second too. I should have thought of that while I was at the case, but a lot of it's just been like, stay dumb, do things your own way, and then hear what people think and then adapt to it. Because it's like being stubborn and staying that way, we would never have sold as many as we have. They wouldn't be as easy to make, you know. And then, I mean, my spirit of trying to reduce pieces, the Saros clip is the same clip that goes into the Avivos pry bar. So at least those are adaptable to each other, you know, where I wanted that clip to fit the Anura when I did cut the clip off and start making it out of smaller material, a faster machine time, less expensive tools to produce it, all of those things that went into. There was a really tricky step where I would like pry the integral clip up and use a Dremel to round the back side of the final where it slides over the pocket, so it would slide back out without catching. And that was just nerve-wracking as could be, because you really had to come after it with, you know, some hand finishing and a Dremel before the thing could be called done, you know. And it was like, this is great, but the goal here is to make lots of these. I haven't wanted to make them more expensive. I've wanted to make them more repeatable so that they can either remain the same cost, or maybe my dreams are to sell enough to go lower someday. But I didn't want to like inflate, you know. But, yeah, it's just been, I have
how many have you made?
Design parameters behind why I do things the way I do. And like a businessman would tell me that I'm doing it wrong. I'm like, no, you need to inflate it. And it's like, that's not the case here. Like, we're trying to do made in America, custom pieces, and not kill, because I've never bought a $400 knife in my life, and that's the cheapest knife that I offer right now, and the margins are really tight on it. And it's like, I've always wanted them. I've looked at them in the case, you know, but it's just not been something that was available.
How many of the Saros have you made?
over all of the versions, I would estimate that there's probably like 150, 155 out there. So not thousands, you know. It's been right. And it's been a recent change where instead of doing serial numbers, I put the date that they were made, because the serial numbers were becoming really hard to keep track of. So a lot of the early versions have a serial number, and they're very limited. There's very few of them like that. But then I started putting the handle, so it's only engraved in the handle, and I put the number it was made that day, and like the most I've ever made in a day was 3. And so it's like it'll say like 1 and then day, month, or month, day, year.
Okay.
And that's how I've been serializing them.
That works. Yeah, I don't remember what this one was. This one,
and it's right in the slot now. They've been under.
Yeah, it is down in there. 1121123.
So that would have been the first handle made 12/11/23.
Okay. Well, there you go.
If my memory is sticking with me on that one.
Yeah, and not only are you making the handles, but you're making the pivots and the stop pivot. Like you're making everything, obviously, other than the blade steel.
And the bearings, like you said.
And the bearings. But everything else.
The detent. That's my detent balls, is just ceramic bearings from failed bearings. It's like, well, we have infinite those. So
that works.
Use them.
Yeah, I mean, Mersalt here says 400 for a USA made production titanium integral is a bargain.
Appreciate
that. Yeah, that means you're kind of like competing with Benchmade at that point, because I remember back in the day when they made their integral for like $420, right?
Wild.
Yeah, and that was back in the day. Today's Benchmade would be like $9,000, $900 easy.
Right. I had a buddy come through who had worked there, and he told me that his job was to assemble, like he was supposed to assemble, I think he said 80 infidels a night. And he said on a good night, he'd get 160 done. And it was just so humbling to be like, holy cow, you know, that's a lot of knives. So
that's a lot to assemble.
But less fidgeting, right? Because you already got your cut parts and everything pre-done. And so it's just pure assembly.
It was a really interesting thing, because I had a guy, I did an aerospace and defense conference where I like displayed machine components and offered services. And I had a guy come sit and talk with me, and he was wearing a suit and he looked like an important guy. And he was like, he was interested in the knives, you know? Yeah. And so I was telling him about them, and he was like, these must be hard to make, huh? And I was like, they are, but part of like why I offer contract work is so I can level up, add machines, and get to the point where, and then I like made a reference where I was talking about Yamaha motorcycles, and told them like, and how many that they produce a day. And I told him, and why I've decided they're able to do that is because they have infinite parts. And he like looked at me and he was like, you're absolutely right. I was the CEO of Yamaha for 6 years, like a decade ago or something like that. And I was just like, oh, good to know, that's good to know. But like, because making like 400 motorcycles, that complex of an assembly, if that can be done a day, then there's of course you can do it with a 9-piece knife. It should be doable, and it was infinite parts is a big part of that, why Benchmade makes that happen, I'm sure. And they have teams of people, just like for every step.
But like there is having like a great automation process and something like that is great, but with tool wear and everything else, there's always going to be some slight variance, right?
Oh, totally.
So, like, do you kind of build your process to like accept that in the end there's gonna be a tiny little bit of hand finishing it on most knives, right? For fit and finish, or
there always will be. And when you're trying to, I've been able to dial things in pretty close by doing like in-machine measurements and stuff like that, and having digital measurement files sent back to my computer so I can really quality check each piece before I take it out of the machine. to like ensure that the clip is flush to the back of the knife. But for a long time, we were grinding every clip and handle together to get a flush look. But that took extra handwork. It took skilled handwork. I was doing it by hand for a long time before I implemented a Ameribraid grinder that can do a good enough job there to be to the acuity, the visual acuity of a knife customer, because it's top tier. Like, people really expect things to be centered, tips to be centered, grinds to be even side to side. And those kind of tolerances, it's crazy how much handwork that really is, because having the machine just spit it out, it just doesn't happen that way.
Yep.
Totally.
It may happen that way maybe only for like a few knives, right? And then as the process goes on, then the tools start to wear things.
And sometimes even a sharp tool, you put it in and it's like, now my tolerance is off. And it's like, well, I ordered the same one. Did the manufacturer deviate of the tooling?
Right.
And they do. And like, there's a lot of production manufacturers where they're die hard. They're like, you will send us this same part number with no deviation because we don't have the wherewithal to change it in process. We need it to be repeatable, you know? So, but part of like trying to evolve is you're like, oh, well, this tool's been doing a great job, but I'm going to switch to a 7 flute, or, you know, however you can think of to try and get more done. And when you do, those changes happen and you're like, great, the 12 clips that I made don't fit now. What do I do with them? You know? And so a lot of the like startup life is like, well, you could make them work. You could throw them away. You could oftentimes I'll make a second run of handles or something like that fit those clips by making the adjustments. And then I'll make another run of handles that fit the clips that didn't fit the original handles, and just try to like, you don't have to throw them away. You can grow from it and adjust on the other side, you know, but it gets pretty tricky when it's like that blade lock up to the lock bar with where the pin is going to stop it and all of that good stuff. So it was honestly awesome to hear the criticism on that, because it solidified in my mind that it was a change that needed implemented. It was like, you get stubborn, like, and you're like, well, I've done it right this way before. I'm just going to like keep my nose to the grindstone, when it really, it's time to go back to the drawing board and it's time to make a change, even if it's going to be like, well, great. You know, we're going to have to learn here. There's always that curve.
Yeah, we can always learn and grow and change and do things differently and better. And that's just the way life is.
That's what keeps it fun. I've told machinists that I've trained at prior companies that if you've made a part 100 times, because some of the parts we were making like 6,000 before we'd change over, it was like, if you've made a part even 100 times and you haven't thought of one way to make the process better, you've given up. Like, you aren't trying to be a great machinist anymore. You're trying to be an operator, and there's place for that, but not necessarily in small companies. It's like everybody needs to be thinking of ways to change it. And like for me, where it's largely I'm alone, but I've got a couple part-timers who do a good bit of helping when they're around.
Yeah.
It's up to the community, and you have to put it in people's hands. And I was always afraid to send it to, you know, a reviewer of any kind, but only because I knew a lot of things that I could make better myself. And I was so thankful when Gergerpel said that he was going to do that. I was like, all right, sounds good. Like, let's do it.
I get it. When I make videos and put them out, I sometimes worry that people are going to say they suck and this and that, right? Totally. Like, I just did an assembly video of like a cheap knife that ended up taking like 18 minutes to put together. And I was like, oh my God, nobody's going to watch to the end of this thing. But maybe they will, maybe they won't. I don't care. I just post stuff anyway. But I totally get the concerns of taking your product and putting it into somebody's hands to critique is different than giving it to somebody who bought it. And the person who buys it is also going to critique it a little bit.
Yeah.
But they may not be as ruthless about it.
And
Not that I was ruthless,
and they
but
can
yeah,
be,
I don't know.
you know. They definitely can be, but hopefully they give you that feedback and it's something that you can either fix for them or work
Yep.
with them, or that's not how, you know, it's sticking. Or I've had a detent ball fall out once and I have no idea how it happened or if we sent it out without one. But luckily the guy worked with me and I sent him a recall pack and he mailed it back that day, and I
Okay.
got it turned around and sent back to him, and he loves it. And it's like, it's the people who don't speak up are the ones that I worry about. Because, like, I don't want the thing to suck. I want you to be proud of it. I want it to be something that you want. You know, at the end of the day, that's what I care about, is that it's what you expected, you know.
Right. Because if they're not telling you, hey, there's this issue with this thing, they're just throwing it in the drawer and they're telling all of their friends that
Yeah.
it sucked and
Totally.
I wasted my money. Like, that's a concern. So I'm more of the, let me call the maker and say, hey, I bought this thing. It has this issue. Is that normal? Like, what's wrong? Like, is it just me being too finicky because of whatever? And I've sent things back and they've worked on it. And then they send it back and like, okay, now it's great. Thanks a lot. And it's all great and fine and dandy. So
I think
get
that's
it.
with the American made too, where it's like it's a cool world we live in where you're in contact maybe with the guy who actually made the part you're talking about, you know?
Yes.
And it's like, yeah, no, that's not what I want you to have. You know,
Right.
like, let's get it figured out. And I've actually reached out to Gergerpol about the knife you've got right there. And it's like, well, when you get it back, I'd love to get it back too, and like get that problem sorted for you, because now I've implemented a change and we'll get it swapped out and we'll make it awesome. If he loves it and he wants to keep it for nostalgia, then that's great too. But at the end of the day, all I care about is that people are getting what they were anticipating, you know?
No, that's great. And that kind of leads right into him saying, hey, Dirk, ask him when the next drop is. And there's been a lot of people in the comments that I know you haven't seen the comments, but talking about how great the price sounds at 400-ish bucks, and for a handmade custom in the United States. And there's a list of people that probably want one.
I love that.
So when is your next drop? How is that going to work?
I've got about 6 or so orders that are absolutely priority. And I've like promised myself that I wouldn't release another knife until those orders went out. And then invented this change. And so I'm excited to implement that. I should be cutting the new version of the Saros blade this next week, I'm hoping. And then I'll heat treat it and I'll get it finished and I'll evaluate if my change worked the way I wanted it to. And I'm hoping for, I mean, we're like midsummer now, so it'll be like before the end of summer is what I'm really shooting for, is like within the next month and a half to like be able to release a drop of knives. I've got like 30 Anura handles of material. And so I want to make a good batch of that knife as well. It's a lot smaller with a straight blade. I'll grab one real quick.
Okay, great. And then while he's grabbing that, who was it up here? Mersad talked about only the cheap flashlight videos suck. You know, I kind of like, I don't really like doing the flashlight videos necessarily because I don't think I do a good job at them. So they suck. I totally understand that. And I apologize to them when they send it to me and I say it only got 42 views or whatever. I apologize. And they're super great about it. They don't care if it gets 3 views, because then it's there. If somebody Googles it later, they might find it. So yeah, I get it. I think the lights are great. I just don't think I portray them very well because they're flashlights, not like, I haven't really perfected the flashlight reviewing.
He hasn't reviewed a flashlight yet.
Yeah. So
that'll give you views, man. A lot of views.
The what?
If you review the flashlight, you'll have a lot of views.
You're just gonna have to start.
It'll be a cheap flashlight. They get videos, get lot of views.
Yeah, I don't know that I could do that one though.
Go over
because I'd have to
the-
demonstrate it, and I don't know.
I
think that
didn't
might go
say
against-
anything about demonstration.
I think that might go against YouTube, terms. I don't know.
You could just be really descriptive.
Yeah, I guess. And then, so as we talk about the drops, so how do your drops, how do they work? If people are interested at the end of summer, whatever time frame, do you just post them on your website? Do you post them on Instagram? How does it work for you?
They will go on the website, and it'll just be a limited quantity, first come, first serve. And I've advertised out the drop time and made sure that the website was updated, because this has all been like designing a website was pretty new to me also. But getting everything to where when I say that it's live, it'll actually be live at the time.
Right.
Because traditionally, a lot of what I've done is when people reach out, I'll sell them a knife. It's like, well, yeah, I'll make you one. And like the lead time's about this. And sometimes I've blown that. But people are super understanding because they're very aware of how small of a company I really am.
Right.
But
I think the key to that is communicating with your customer who, like, you've missed the deadline. It happens. It's not the end of the world, but you communicate like ahead of time, or like, hey, I'm not going to have it done tomorrow because of whatever. Totally. I'm going to try to get it by next Tuesday or whatever. Right. The key is really communicating, because there's been other makers that for way more than $400, they go silent and dark for months, weeks, years. I know somebody that's paid a maker in full like 20 months ago and is still waiting and hasn't really heard much from the maker.
Totally. And that
was his first mistake.
I want people to reach out so that I can tell them, like,
right,
this is where we're at. I'm working on it. I haven't forgotten you. Here's your build right here, and it's just not what I would send out, because you're not going to be happy with it. And if you give me the time to make it what I want it to be, great. And if you need your money back, that's okay too. And I've refunded some guys, and they've been super gracious about it, because it's like, well, I'll try again when you're doing drops, and I appreciate that they're sticking with me on that. But they want to get their money circulating in the knife pool, and they're ready to buy something else that is finished or something aftermarket, or used, and that's always fun. I do see that someone's asking every now and then, the comments are popping up.
Is there an email sign up?
That is something I've been meaning to launch for some time now. So check in on Hathaway Knives Instagram, and we'll get an email sign up on the website, hopefully within the next couple weeks. I'll have to figure that out. But I have an awesome helper, Maddie, who comes in a couple times a week and has done website stuff for me. And that allows me to keep machining parts.
Gotcha.
And so she's figured a lot of stuff out, but it's definitely not her day job either, where she's like a chemical engineer. And she's like, you want me to make a website post? All right. How do I do that?
Yeah, I get it.
Rolled with it in the best ways, because it's like, there's a lot of help though. I've got a lot of people who like want to help. And for me, a lot of times it's just like, I need to level up and be able to make payroll, in order for that to happen. And I just like take more contract work to make it even possible. So I'm really looking forward to the day where we're pumping knives out of here.
Perfect. And Ed, does that mean you're going to be my first subscriber?
Fans only, huh?
I don't know.
Did my camera just switch on you guys? Am I horizontal?
It did. It just went. Yeah, you may have to like twist it again.
Yeah, must have wiggled the desk.
All
right, I'm twisting.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
That works too.
That works too. That's vertical now, but that works.
Yeah.
I see what you mean. It's weird that it would have switched.
I don't know. You can try rotating it again and see what happens.
That wasn't the button. Yeah, let's just push it right back and see what it does.
There you go.
Normal again?
Sometimes it just gets goofy. So now it looks good now.
just like machine tooling.
Right.
Yeah, every now and then something does something weird and you're like, what like,
Yeah,
what?
for sure. I mean, it's a strange world that we live in, and I think you're doing it the right way, is making some stuff. Stay true to what you want to make for sure, and then listen to some feedback and then adjust as you grow. And yeah, I mean, that's just how it is. Oh boy. EDC for Fun asks, am I still carrying the battle? Do you mean this one? The one that's been in my pocket now for 200 days? And I haven't carried anything else since?
That shape I had on a Kershaw and absolutely loved it. Like the recurve to Tonto, just awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So I have been carrying this. It is day 200 today. I have recently bought the Todd Rexford Singularity C. I actually did carry this to one thing, to my jeweler to show him. He had some new Omegas in that he wanted to show me. So I did carry this over there to show him, but I have not carried it. Yeah, I've only carried the battle. And at this point, I think I'm just going to commit to the full year and then do a video on that come December 27th of 2024. That'll mark the year. And my other buddy told me to just retire it at that point. Show the video and show it going into a drawer after I've talked about the experience. Put it in the drawer behind me where my fishers live, in one of those drawers back there, and just put it there. But we'll see. I don't know. So yeah, I have carried it. I've used it. I carried it when I was in Utah off-roading. It was out there while I was working on the Broncos and doing stuff in my pocket. Like, yeah, whatever. It's just a knife. If it gets really messed up, I can send it in to have it spod and fixed and whatever. It's not.
That's how I treat my stuff too.
You know, and for that whole trip, I am also into watches, as you guys know. I was wearing the Omega Planet Ocean today. When I went to Utah, I always take a couple of watches with me and a couple of knives just in case something happens. But I never took off the Rolex Air King. I used it the whole time. I wore it while I was working on the Broncos and working on some other vehicles, and it was just the watch I wore the whole time I was there. Again, it's just a watch. If it gets really scratched and beat up, I am friends with the service center guys in Detroit. I can ship it to them. They're an authorized Rolex service center, and they can make it back to brand new. Cost a couple of bucks, and you move on.
Yep. Why not enjoy your stuff, right?
Totally.
So I don't know. I'm the same way. There are some knives that like I try to be like. I have a Michael Ziba S5 Mini that's in Dragon Damascus, and he specifically told me he hates working with that and he'll never do it again. So that's a knife. Like for example, I probably won't cut much more than opening mail or maybe a small box or something. But then like anything else where like it's something that, you know, I know the guy.
Yeah.
Like my Chupacabra from Casey, that one, dude, I've had that custom since 2017. It's been through hell and back.
Yeah. They can always be fixed. I carry most everything. There are a few I don't really carry often, like the Phil Harvey Peacemaker at 2.5 pounds. That one doesn't get carried that often. I carried it at the California Custom Show last year, and I think that was really the only time I truly carried it for the day. Man, I needed suspenders with my belt.
I was gonna say that's like a suspenders class there.
Yeah, it's not quite 2.5 pounds, but it's just over 2 pounds. And it's massive. It takes up the whole freaking pocket. But such a conversation piece. So many people.
That's what she said.
Yeah, so many people saw the pocket clip at 5 inches sticking out of my pocket, and everybody wanted to look at it. Let me grab it. So that one I don't carry often.
I'm looking forward to revitalizing the Anura. This is some of the Anuras that had the integral clip, so it's like all one piece to there. Where the new ones are coming, I did
That's
like
pretty cool.
slight changes to them, where like you can see the detent pocket on the blade, and so I extended the handle just a little bit to cover that up. I changed the blade to a flat grind where it'll go like the full length of the knife. It's no longer an integral clip, so they're a little bit easier to make, and we can just bolt one on. Same hardware, same bolt, but different clip to make those a little bit more repeatable. The lock bar track is just like slightly smaller and like less noticeable and sleeker. And I'm really looking forward to finishing one of these, but I've kind of like, well, you could move right onto those, but you owe these people the Saros. And so I'm just staying true to that. I want to get those in their hands. And then we'll revamp this design and get some of those out there. It's a fun knife. It's like a 5th pocket knife. So it's really small.
Yeah. Okay.
But so useful. Like the day I made it, I stopped carrying the Saros for probably like 8 months or something like that, because like for opening boxes, it's got the best like little tip type of thing where it's just fun to use. Not like you would want to process game with it.
Right. No, you gotta have the right thing for the right tool for the right thing. So
totally.
For those of you that are not maybe familiar with the Phil Harvey Peacemaker, this is the Phil Harvey Peacemaker, and this is the Saros.
That's awesome.
Okay, just so we understand what we're talking about.
Oh my.
So, yes, I've heard it called a folding shovel, a spatula, a sword with the tip broken off. Yeah, they've called it a lot of things. It's 3/8 thick blade stock. It's, I don't remember, almost an inch overall thickness-ish. I don't remember the exact. And yeah, the pocket clip is about 5 inches that sticks out of your pocket here.
That's incredible.
And yeah, it's a hefty beast. And it is certainly a 2-hand closer, because I cannot really get it with my thumb. I have to really kind of do it this way and do kind of the claw. And it was really sharp when I first got it, but I have used it. I have split some wood with it. I've done some kind of action videos, if you will. Shoved it into the tree stumps in the new backyard and things like that. So it's not as sharp anymore. There's a little bit of blade damage here and there. But I have 3 from Phil Harvey, who's in England, and all 3 just need to get boxed up and shipped to him for SPA, because each of them have a little thing, a little issue, if you will.
One of the first things my dad did was he's always going on bike trips with his friends, like cycling trips, and he batoned the Saros to make kindling.
Okay.
to start a fire, and I was like, all right, like, how did it do? And
Yep.
I'm pretty sure that was even like a first version, like aluminum handle integral, so it's like a little risky to baton it through things, but it like held up. The tip didn't break, and like it was thick enough to do it, and it was like, we'll make them hollow ground and as slicey as we can, but I want that spine to just stay as thick as possible.
I agree.
Clearly not as thick as possible when you pull out a 3/8 thick blade.
Yeah. So Robbo here has a question, which I think is a legit question, and we can talk about this for a minute. So when he's carrying his $140 Finch, he taps wherever I'm carrying it, like every 15 minutes. Like he taps his pocket and make sure it's still there, right? What do you guys do when you carry a $500 knife? And Stacy commented in that, hey, Robbo, they carry some at 5-digit prices. So yes, the King Battle is a 5-figure knife. Okay. The Todd Rexford is a 5-figure knife. And when I carry this, like Robbo kind of does comment back down here, hey, do they walk around with their hand firmly attached to it? No, I throw it in my pocket. Now this thing has got some heft to it. It's like 11.5 ounces, 4.25 inch blade, fairly, thick. And the pocket clip works really well. So I know this is secure in my pocket. So I shove it in my pocket, and it's got enough heft to it that I know that it's there and it's not going to fall out. I don't know that anybody's going to come and steal it from me because nobody's really pocket knife thieving. They do watch thieve. Like if you're walking around with a Rolex in Beverly Hills, I have seen guys roll up on people with guns and take their watches. That is a thing. I don't know that it's a thing that people are rolling up with guns to take your knife. Maybe it happens. I don't know. I just don't worry about it. I
don't think enough people know what a full custom knife really looks like.
Right.
That you're going to get mugged on the street for it. And I do that too, by the way. No matter what knife I have, I always tap my pocket every once in a while, make sure it's there. But it's not because I'm scared of the value. It's just because I want to make sure I didn't leave it on my work desk or whatever.
That's the big thing, is setting it down somewhere.
And I do kind of tap my pocket. I mean, don't get me wrong. I know that it's there. And some of the lighter knives, like the Rexford that's light, or my VC Edge interfaces at 1.5 ounces, they're light. They disappear in my pocket. I am more kind of tapping my pocket when I'm wearing one of those, carrying one of those, because I had an incident. I talked about it before when I was in New York. I had my full dress custom VC Edge interface in my pocket. And I was meeting with a knife friend there. I was there for work, but I was meeting with 50 Shades of Slash on Instagram, John Paul. And we sat down at the restaurant. I went to pull it out of my pocket to show him, and it wasn't there.
Oh my gosh.
And I freaked. So I checked my bag because I had brought some other knives. I thought, well, maybe I put it in my bag. Nope, it was gone. I figured it must have just dropped in one of the taxis I had taken.
Oh my God.
I get back to my hotel. I take my backpack off. I lay it on the bed, and it's dangling from the strap of my backpack because somehow when I got in or out of the cab, I pulled my backpack onto my lap. I got out. It hooked it and pulled it out of my pocket. Yes, scare of the lifetime. I was scared for about 2 minutes, and then I told him over dinner, I'm like, I guess I'd just buy another one. I mean, it sucks because it wasn't cheap, but I'll just have Jason, the owner, make me another one, which I didn't have to do because I found it. It did bend the pocket clip out. So both of my VC Edge interfaces are down in Southern California right now at the maker getting sharpened, like refresh. He wanted to go through one of them himself because it went around to different YouTube channels. So he wanted to just clean it, put it together, sharpen it for me, all that, for me loaning it around. And then the other one with the bent pocket clip, I just said, here, just take it and do your thing. He goes, well, what upgrades do you want? I'm like, wait, what do you mean what upgrades? Like it's already, he goes, oh no, I perfected some. Let me get them in and then I'll get back with you about possible upgrades for them. I'm like, dude, I don't want to, I don't want, what upgrades is, I kind of am intrigued now what upgrades he could do to it. But at the same point, I'm going to be careful about going crazy with money again. It was a hefty build to begin with because we went a little crazy on the whole build of that knife. So yeah, I obviously don't have it here or I would show you, but yeah, it's basically all carbon fiber. Even the blade is mostly carbon fiber.
Oh, cool.
With
super cool.
The steel sandwiched in like a taco. So it's,
wow.
The blade is three parts. Left side carbon fiber, right side carbon fiber, and then the steel in the middle that protrudes out. and is epoxied together and holds the blade in.
That's
the
neat.
steel into the blade.
I really enjoyed that knife, taking it apart, looking at it. That was one of my favorite reviews I've ever done.
And he makes his own bearing cages.
Cool.
And I don't think he actually makes the balls, but he makes the copper cages, phosphor bronze, whatever they're made of. And the VC is built into the bearing. Like you can see
he's got his
are in a VC.
initials in it.
Wow.
Yeah. So if the balls spell out VC, it's really freaking cool.
That was a goal of mine, is to like implement making the cages. And then I had Boca Bearing screw up an order over like one of the first Christmases I made knives. And they sent me some out of tolerance bearings, and the cages were too small to fit the pivots that I had made. And they felt so bad, they sent me a pack of like, I don't know, 1,700 or something bearings.
Oh, wow.
And it was like, I guess I'm using these for a little while. And it's been really helpful because I've been able to like kill a ton of bearings, getting my deburr processes and, you know, pockets the right size where like even the smallest burr can cause a bearing failure when you're taking it apart. And so, it let me get to a point where we're not killing too many of them now, but someday in the future, I'd like to step it up again. You know, it's like I'm always inspired to try and make more of the pieces, even though that's crazy. We're supposed to be trying to make less of them, but it's like that's not how.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I get it. So somebody says here, EDC for fun. Dennis, Gabe, do you still have the first knife you ever made?
I do. I might have it right here. Oh, I forged a knife in my garage before I started doing the machining thing. And so that one's at home, and I won't have it to show, but it's kind of funny how much it looks like the Saros almost.
Oh, yeah?
But it had Bacote wood scales epoxied on to the bar that I had found, and like built a terracotta pot charcoal forge with a leaf blower because I just needed to make something. Like I was pent up. The companies I was working with were kind of like pushing back on me for wanting me to be the lead of their machining operations anymore. I got really sick and with MS, and things changed in a big way for me. And the shops that I was working for kind of like smelled blood in the water a little bit, and decided that like maybe I wasn't the guy to do the job that I had been doing for them. And when they started doing that, I started my own shop. It was a clear next step of like, well, if you don't think I can do it, I'm not going to try and convince you. I'm just going to do it elsewhere because that has to happen. But forging that knife kicked my butt in a big way. And I was really tired and the heat from all of it. And I was happy with it. But that was the big inspiration of like, okay, now machine one. Like now put your, you know, your trade to work and do this in a way that's sustainable. And it's been a ton of work. Nonetheless, I've been surprised that I can hold out as I have. Because like the doctors told me, like, you're going to want to quit your job, go on disability. Like you probably want to sell your house to decrease stress and move in with your parents type of thing. And it was like, you couldn't have told me worse news. Like I love the stress of a shop. I love figuring out problems. I like the headache it's there and it's no fun when it's there, but you figure it out. And the breath of fresh air when you walk outside at night is real, you know? So it was like, I'm going to double down and start a shop and make a product and push this company as hard as I can and prove to myself that you guys are wrong, you know, and that a little bit of resilience goes a long way. Like working out, you stress something and you get stronger. The brain is just like that too. And so I found some awesome treatment. It did a great job. It was called Lemtrada, and it was like chemotherapy that wiped your immune system out completely, and kind of like off and oning a computer. They just let it regenerate, and they hope that it doesn't attack you when it does. And mine has been really good. That was 6 years ago now. I haven't taken any disease modifying therapies since then. It's just been trying to eat healthy, and living like a normal human, you know, and it really kind of did that for me. I'm different though. I used to push my limits on mountain bikes and snowboards and rock climbing, and now it's like, well, stay in the climate controlled shop,
right?
And
Yeah,
push the limits there, you know.
Right.
And so, it's given me a great outlet. I'm super thankful for the knife world.
No, that's great, and I'm glad to hear that your health is doing good as well. That's
Appreciate
awesome.
Yeah. Happy
Rambo Adventures says we need a watch wrist knife combo. Funny you say that, Mark. Alex has one. I've done a video on it and gifted it to Alex. It is a watch that has a knife built into it.
How cool.
It's a little tiny blade that flips out the back of the case. Yeah.
that you can pull it out. Like, it's hard to pull out, but you can wear it with the blade out. Like, it comes out. I don't remember which side it comes out, but it comes out the side like this, you know, so your blade comes out and you can cut a box open or whatever, and then you push it back in. It's cheesy. It's cheap. It's, you know,
that was a good
no-name blade steel
that's
not very sharp, but it was fun as hell.
Yeah.
I sent it down as a gift. Like, it was fun. And then once you got it, I did the video. I posted the video.
Yeah, I still got that thing too. It's in my watch box.
That's cool.
In the collection.
It's just fun. Like, we got to have fun in the hobby and not take everything too seriously. Yes, we've got some nice stuff, but I also have some goofy stuff like the Peacemaker. It's just goofy, but it's custom. It's fun. Like, again, it's about having fun in the hobby.
Completely agree.
Well, I'm glad you joined us today, because I'll definitely be following you on your journey and checking out your product and stuff. And it's kind of a cool thing, you know, just like you said, all the things that people kind of want, the American made, you know, people love the fact that guys that make their own hardware, machinists, all that stuff, that you got all the right tools to succeed. So
for sure,
I think you're going to do great. You know, and just keep doing what you're doing, man, because, you know, I really like a lot of the stuff you had to say. I really like the knife designs, and I can't wait to see what you do next, you know.
I super appreciate that. It's been really fun to think about coming on here and then making it happen. You guys have been great. So
yeah, no, I appreciate you taking your time and you know, agreeing to do something very informal that doesn't get a lot of views. It's just us chatting, but it kind of just goes in the archives, and it's just something that you can refer back to if you want. You can share with other, you know, whatever. Again, it's about trying to build our little piece, sub community of the big community, I guess, is what I do. So, but yeah, we appreciate it.
The part about the knife world is like the passion behind it. Like, it's one of the funnest things you can make. Like, if I would have started making mountain bike parts, a lot of people slap a set of cranks on their bike and they don't ever think about them again. But knives are conversation pieces, and they're cherished, and they're used, and they're talked about, and they're collected. And it just makes it so much fun. It really is like a dream of an industry to get to work in.
Awesome.
It is.
I think that's go ahead, Alex.
Oh no, I was saying it is a very cool industry to be in. And, you know, the thing is, and I think Dirk can agree with me too, is like, I don't know how long you've been in the knife like community stuff, but me, it's been probably about like I said, about maybe 12 years or something like that. And it's changed a lot. There is so many more players than there used to be. I kind of liked it when the choices are pretty limited and the releases were always seasonal. Like, you always knew October, ZT, here we come. They're going to come with their factory custom lines. Everybody's, you know, like there was a set schedule when you knew where like stuff was going to be.
Yeah.
And the choices were like few brands, few custom knife makers. And then anything beyond that, because like the high-end customs, like, you know, like Dirk has and all that stuff, they've been around a long time too, but that wasn't really as publicized to the mainstream. It was just a few people, right? So, and now this thing just like blew up worldwide. It's huge. And I think knives is a really cool thing because it's one of our like probably most primitive tools we had probably before fire, right? And I mean, I think all three of us can agree having a knife in your pocket's pretty useful for the most part throughout the day. I know it's very rare when I don't carry one, but I do miss it when it's.
You don't carry a knife sometimes? What the hell?
Yeah. Depending on where I'm going.
Yeah,
it's pretty rare though. I mean, like that's like maybe 3 days out of the year or something like that.
There are certain places that, yes, if you're going to like a sporting event or when I'm traveling in the airplane, like, yes, there are a few times where I cannot carry a knife, and it saddens me greatly when that happens.
It's weird.
And I keep tapping my pocket looking for it.
I keep tapping my pocket, and then I'm like, where did it go? Oh, yeah, it's in the car because I had to go through freaking metal detectors to get into wherever I am.
I was doing another conference one time and they were doing metal detectors. No knives can come in. And I put it in my shoe and walked in with it anyway, because I knew that like this was the calling card that I had made for people to see a window to my skills, you know, and took it in there and ended up selling like a group of 30 knives or something like that to a local shop that wanted to give them away as Christmas gifts to their employees. And it was really early in my startup where they weren't the knives I'm producing now. They were aluminum handled. There was a lot less time in them. They weren't the product they are today, you know. And I sold them for quite a big discount. I think they were, I want to say maybe like $165 a piece or something like that. But to not take my knife into a place, it's like it's gut wrenching a little bit. Like,
and yes, putting it in your shoe. You know, I'm not telling people how to do here, but the way the magnetometers work, they're not really picking up your shoes so much.
It turns out.
So,
there were some there were state senators that were going to be there and stuff like that, and it was like I saw the reasoning, but it was like I mean that was the step forward we took early on, and it was needed, you know.
Yes.
So do what you got to do. And
Marisol says his wife carried a knife at LAX, no problem. When I've been doing work, my work, I have worked at many airports, and I have carried a knife around the airports when I've worked there. Done job site visits and things like that. And like even before, like way before 9/11 stuff, I carried a police model Spyderco on planes, no problem back in the day. It's a different world today, and that even stopped. Knives on planes stopped before 9/11. It just got more crazy after 9/11. So yeah, you know, I get it, and it is what it is. So yeah, I always have to check my knives and hope they make it there, which is a whole different topic that we could spend another hour talking about. But,
totally, it's nerve-wracking.
Yeah, and yes, it was an accident, and yes. Do you want to know how many guns actually get onto planes? It happens. Okay.
Yeah, it does.
It happens. The guys at the TSA check screening thing, like I've worked with those guys for a long time, that agency. Yes, they're only as good as the guy. Like, you know, it is what it is. Like, yes, you can get stuff through, but 9 out of 10 times you're not. 99 out of 100 times you're not going to. So I would never try to get something through security at an airport.
I'm sure a big reason is the person doesn't even know they've got it. It's like it's completely hidden to all parties, and then they remember at some point, and it's like, oh, holy crap!
Yep.
I hope I get off this thing without much conflict.
Yeah, the last 2 times I've flown, I've taken my zirconium torch from Yellow Day Energy, and I put it in my laptop bag, so it goes through the X-ray thing. Both directions, I was sent to secondary screening because of that light. Now, when I've done the titanium lights before, same exact light in titanium, it just went through that there was no problem. So something about the zirconium shows up on the machine differently, and they want to check it every time.
Interesting.
Well, the 2 times I've flown with it since I just got that. But yeah, so that's interesting. I am very good. I am a professional flyer. So I know that I literally barely ever put knives in my laptop bag or firearm stuff in my laptop bag because I want to keep it totally separate. Purposely keep that separate so I don't accidentally make a mistake of having something in there when I go to the airport.
Makes sense. It's easy to forget when you're carrying.
I think I gotta take this guy out to pee right now. I'll be right back.
All right. Well, I think we're wrapped up anyway. Thanks everybody for your time.
Thanks for having me on.
That's a good segue. Our new mascot, Max.
Oh yeah, here, everybody meet Max. He's
Hold on, let me make him big screen before you take him off.
He's
there you go.
8-week-old cattle dog, Australian cattle dog, or a blue heeler. So his name's Mad Max because that's the dog that Mad Max had in the second movie, The Road Warrior. So I named him that. He's gonna be our new mascot. He just woke up from a nap and he's probably ready to roll.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Thank you, Gabe. Thanks a lot.
Thank you
guys a lot, man.
Everybody.
Yeah, keep in touch.
We'll see you next time.
Have a good one.
Absolutely.